And that's our synthesizer for today. We are again using the Arturia Microbrute as our source for a synthesizer. And today we're setting up a patch on the Zoom. So now we're getting into the more fun part. The first 3 parts of this video series was involved in how to navigate it, how to use it. So if you're coming in on this video, you may want to go back and watch 1, 2, and 3 to get caught up, because each one is building on its own. I don't want to repeat myself every time I make a video. So today we're making a patch for a synthesizer, and I've created on this synth a fairly simple and thin, not very good sounding one. So I wanted to use this as an illustration of how you can actually make a bigger synth with just the effects. So here's our tone. Now what you heard was an octave range of 2. When I'm doing sound design, it's very rare I can get an entire 88 keys, like a piano size key. It's very, very difficult to design sounds that work across that much. But normally we're not doing solo synthesizers when we play music. We're orchestrating them together. So it's actually a good thing that I'm designing. So our design for the effects is within that narrow range. I'll show you later when I get into lower tones, it's not very interesting or a good sound at all. But in the upper tones, the upper pitches, where it's kind of thin, really doesn't sound a whole lot better than some of the early Casios. So, with the magic of effects, here's what we're looking at today. And here's the effects chain that I created to make that. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 modules are in here to make that effect. And that's the creative part of Zoom. We got at least 50, 60, 70 modules to pick from. I have not counted them yet, mainly because the chorus, delay, and reverb are only partially what's in there. We also have other kinds of effects, and that's what I'm using today. I'm using synthesizer effects, such as the second one on here. It's called a slow filter, and it involves a simulation of a filter effect on the synthesizer. So we have 4 effects working together. And again, the signal is going this way, the opposite of what you would read. I think they did that because inputs and outputs on pedals for guitars have always been probably input right, output left. So we have to think of the signal path going in the opposite direction you normally do. So when you push the button to get to the first one, as you can see, that's number 1. The second in line is the one to the left, and third, and fourth. So if we get used to watching our signal chain from right to left, it'll be clear. So on the signal chain, I used a modulated reverb as the last. Well, let's go back to the first one and go in order. The first effect was this octave. This is what gives the, and I'm going to go through these and turn these on and off so you can hear them. This is what gave an octave lower tone, like putting a sub onto it. And when you put a sub onto this high lead, that certainly does thicken it up a little right away. Second effect is slow filter. Now on all these other modules, I pretty much knew what I was doing. But this slow filter, that was just guesswork. And that's part of the fun too. Put something in here, like I mean, a slow filter pedal isn't exactly like a delay or a chorus or something you know everything about. So this one I just had to tweak until I found something that was kind of nice. The stereo delay we've used before in the other videos. And we have a modulated reverb today, which you haven't used yet. And when you combine them all together, now one thing when you're combining modules together, you're going to have to watch the levels fairly closely because it will overload fairly easy, and overload distortion on digital is not a good sound. So I spent half my time screwing around with levels. Fortunately, you see the red dot, by pushing these in and out, you can cut them out and troubleshoot where the noise is coming from. You can hear there's still a little bit of noise in there I gotta tune out. Okay, so let's turn these off individually and see what it sounds like. There's the full effects. Now we're going to take the octave off. Gets quite a bit thinner without that little sub in there, doesn't it? And the next was this filter, which gave it a kind of a little wowie sound to it. Here it is. That's all 4 of them on. Let's turn just that filter off. This one's a little more subtle. But what it did is put a voice behind the synthesizer voice, which really is kind of neat sounding. Delay was set up with a fairly short time at 250 milliseconds on the left, 500 on the right. Now you'll notice through these videos, most of the time my mix is set to maximum because again, in the first video I explained, we're using this pedal for only synthesizers and only through a mixer. So in the next video I'm going to show you why the mixes are almost always set to maximum. Mainly because we're adjusting how much effect is actually being paralleled with the analog signal coming through the mixer. So the mixer is controlling how much, not so much the zoom. So that's why mixes are almost set to maximum. Unless I'm getting distortion, then I may take them out. And the next page, we have left feedback, right feedback, and we already had our delay tutorial, so you know what that means. And that's why this is stereo. We're getting a different feedback, different levels in the right and left channels. This is left channel feedback, right channel feedback. Levels, of course, control the volume of the feedback, not the volume of the synth, but the hit after the synth. That's the delay. And on the last page we got the levels, left channel, right channel levels. And thank you to a viewer who wrote a comment. I now know what these tails are, and it's basically a guitar thing. Can be a synth thing, but the tail is when it's off and you switch patches or you turn this on and off. It's a matter of whether you want if it's a reverb, as soon as I switch this off it would get cut off right away. If you put the tail on, then when I cut this off the tail would remain as I cut it off or changed patches. Now, I don't know if it really works well for patching, but it's supposed to work well with the push button activation. And that's the total amount of delay parameters in there. And here it is again, all 4 effects. And without the delay. Again, this is kind of subtle. Quite a bit of difference though, I think. That's without and with the delay. I think delay is giving it a much prettier reverb. And of course the last one is reverb. And reverb off. And everybody knows what reverb sounds like. And of course reverb is tuned to probably the speed at which you're playing, or if you're doing sequences, it would be timed to that. Okay, like I said, now I'm going to show you what it sounds like in the lower pitches. It doesn't sound good at all. So I'm going to make sure all these are turned on. Okay, all four are turned on because I got red lights on each module. Now, if you're looking for that sound, you know it's pretty good. Let's go before and after here. And with all four modules in effects. Definitely a more interesting sound. And that is our lesson for today. I'm going to go let you see what the settings are, so if you really like this sound, you can recreate it yourself from the parameters here. Even though I don't like giving people presets, because synthesizer sound design, effects sound design for synthesizers should be a highly individual thing, per song, per what you want to write. But just to so you can reproduce what we got, here's the modulated reverb. There's the first tab, depth, decay, mix, rate, tone, and pre-delay, level, and tail. Next effect is the stereo delay. Time left, time right, 250, 500 milliseconds. Mix at 100. Left channel feedback, right channel feedback, and level of the feedback. Left channel level, right channel level, and tail. Now here's that one that I had to screw around with because I have no idea how it actually worked. I didn't really know what the time or curve really meant. I assumed time was in milliseconds. I'm not sure. It's probably a time delay or a slow attack, because this is called a slow attack filter. So the more time you give it, the longer it takes for the filter to kick in. So if you're playing real fast, you'd never hear it. Whoops, pushed the wrong button. So we got time, curve, and level. And the next page is resonance, character. We got a 2-pole and a 4-pole filter. You guys on synthesizers will know what that means. Usually the 2-pole is a brighter, more digital sounding, and the 4-pole is a little smoother. What that is, I have no idea. I have no idea. That's what I mean. I had to experiment with this myself to figure out what it was. And the last one is that octave, adding an octave to the playing. So we got octave 1, octave 2, the dry wet mix, and as you can see, I had to turn that down because I was getting too much distortion at 100%. Normally I run 100%, like I said. We got character, tone, and level. Character and tone would really beef up or lighten that bass tone that was being added. And that is our 4 effects algorithm that we're playing today. But it was designed for 2 octaves higher. And let's go back to the original signal. So we're getting quite a bit of character with these effects. And that's adding sound design to a very simple synthesizer. You could go out and buy a cheap Casio and get really good at effects design, and people would never know it's a $50 Casio that you're playing and making your music. And you could sell 1,000,000 copies if it was well done. Well, thanks for visiting. That's our time for today.